Welcome back to the Modern Hippie podcast. I am joined today by my friend Chris Hager, who is a channeler, a medicine facilitator, while also locking it down in the three-dimensional realm as a director of culture at Enrollify. He's also one of the hosts of the Divine Masculine Embodied Retreats, one of which just wrapped up this weekend. Thank you so much for joining me today, Chris.
Absolutely. Happy to be here, Barrett.
So these divine masculine retreats, let's start with that. Before we started recording, you started giving me a little bit of insight about how exciting this last one was. What is a divine masculine retreat, and what happens there?
Sure. Well, to step into that, I think it's probably best to talk about how it all started. And I had gotten together with some friends of mine, David Gilbert and Joseph Martinez, and I just called them up and was like, "Man, we need some time to like sit together as brothers in arms and to chat about life and what's going on and just kind of release some of the energy that we're feeling, some of the grind of day to day of being, a father and an employee and running a business and all these things that we do." And as we made our way through the weekend, there was just incredible shares of, vulnerability and what we're struggling with and what's beautiful. And we started to realize as we were talking, I think it was my friend Joseph, it was like, man, everybody needs this. Like, the sacred space for men to like get together and talk about the things that are going on and to really work through these, emotions that maybe the real world, the 3D every day, we don't get to experience and express ourselves. And so we kind of, thought about it some more and started to realize that, sort of like the feminine experience, like there's certain things that only men can heal in other men, just like there's certain things that only women can heal in other women. And there was this unique opportunity for us to spend time together, creating a sacred container and allowing for these beautiful experiences, whether it was breath work or psilocybin ceremony, this big love ceremony where we basically practice sending love to ourselves and to our loved ones and to, the earth and all these amazing things that were coming through. And they were just very, organic and beautiful. And so the idea was to be able to share it with the world, to be able to have these conversations where we could talk and welcome people, all parts of them, right? I think to be able to step into a sacred space and be told right away that whatever it is going on in your life, whether that's good or bad or however you perceive it, it's all welcome here. So your lightness and your darkness is completely accepted. And it was really through, that first experience and then inviting someone for the next one. We grew to 4 on our next retreat. And then it was 7 people and then 9, then 11. Now we're at, 14 people at our last gathering of just setting a container of safety and really allowing people to see you and then also be seen themselves. And through that, these beautiful expressions would start to come through where, people who have, they can't remember the last time that they've cried are releasing all these tears and all these emotions are coming up. They're going through their very first breathwork experience or psilocybin experience, and they're having these amazing breakthroughs where they are, being seen by their brothers and being seen and not being told that, you're weak for crying or rub some dirt on it. And, a lot of the stuff that we get in terms of the toxic masculinity that exists out there, this safe space. And as we continue to cultivate that safe space, the expression that came through was just nothing short of magnificent. And, what's really beautiful about it and very humbling at the same time is the amount of people that have said, like, this has changed my life. This has changed my life with my partner. This has changed my life with my children or my parents. And, people wanting to come back to the next one and to the next one. And every single time it's like, I invited 2 friends. Is that cool? And I told so-and-so about this. And so just watching it grow very organically and seeing the smile on people's faces, the love that they're living their every single day lives with now that they're just able to access because they've been seen and they know that no matter where they go or what they feel very safe to go back and call on their brother. So it's, supported with, monthly touch points and, a WhatsApp chat group where we can all hey man, I'm really going through it, right? Get somebody else, jump on a call with me, and you just know you have this band of brothers. Because like in any ceremony space, whether it's a psychedelic space or breath work or anything, when you go to spiritual war with somebody, you really get to see what they're made of, and you really get to see what's revealed to them. And as they share those spaces, sometimes for the first time with themselves, and or maybe they've known this thing, right? They've had something that they've really been carrying, but they allow themselves to express it and really be seen and heard. And this beautiful thing happens where it's this, release. And to watch that in other men and see how they show up, in the world for, like I said, their partners or their partnerships, or whether that's business or professional or personal, there's this amazing thing that happens when we get to be seen. And I think it causes some ripples far beyond the weekend itself and the experience of it. And that's why we've called it the Divine Masculine Embodied, DME for short. Is we want people to go forward into the world living in that embodiment and feeling safe and feeling seen, feeling secure, and able to bring that to the people around them in their lives every day.
That is so powerful. I love that you're bringing that awareness to men to be seen, and that um, it's not like an act of leaning too far into the feminine to express their feelings, but it's simply an act of becoming vulnerable that allows for a greater masculinity, I feel, to emerge within men themselves by not suppressing. And like you said, to be seen, to be so witnessed. When someone else witnesses us, it validates those layers of authenticity within that sometimes we're so scared that if we cry, we're going to be shunned because that's been the experience. But then when you pivot and you get with a band of brothers and they say, yeah, let those tears go. We love you for those tears. Those tears are powerful. And on the other side of those tears is more strength. And I think
Mm,
for starters, that's something that I see a lot of men having conflicted within them, that tears are a weakness, when actually I think tears are a sign of such courage, because on the other side of that is really um, awareness and strength and the ability to build and to grow.
yeah, no, I couldn't agree more with that sentiment. In fact, as we when we look to open up our circles and really create that sacred container and open up a sacred space for people to be able to share, one of the things that we talk about is redirecting the narrative around that, right? And that
Mhm.
the ultimate sign of strength is tearing your chest open and being vulnerable. That sharing your it brings up some emotion right now to share it, because um, sharing your vulnerability takes courage. It's become too easy for us to step into a place where we don't share those things and we don't talk about them and we don't express ourselves. And it's, to talk about what you said earlier, it's one of the beauties is that we all have, this divine masculine energy and divine feminine energy in us. And it's really a balance, right? And so we spend a lot of time talking about honoring the divine feminine and talking about how powerful it is to really express ourselves in a safe and comfortable space. And by doing that and restoring this balance, we allow not only just, ourselves, but other people to really feel like seen. And, redefining what a man looks like is definitely a part of this. And, I've had the pleasure of being a part of Fit for Service in 2019 and 2020. And I remember Kyle Kingsbury, who, if you don't know who Kyle Kingsbury is, for people listening to this, he's this mountain of a man. Played college football, a UFC fighter at light heavyweight, I believe, jujitsu champ. I mean, you see this guy and you're like, okay, like if that guy's angry, we got to find a place to exit the building quickly because he can toss some people around. And I remember sitting at one of his circles in a smaller group. I think there was about 35, 40 people there. And I don't even remember what the subject was that he was teaching on, but he started talking about his son and he immediately started crying. Like tears flowing down his face. And he just spoke with such love and such vulnerability about what it meant to have a son, and the type of father that he wanted to be and the type of father that he had, and the marriage between those things, and what he would do differently. And I remember seeing that express vulnerability and thinking, damn, like if this guy can cry like that, if he can just, within the first 10 minutes open up to this group, and he didn't bat an eyelash, he didn't apologize for his tears, he didn't say I'm sorry, right? There was none of that. It was just, here you go. And they were presented really as this gift. And it was a gift to everybody that was there, at least in my perception. That's my reality and my truth. And I remember thinking, okay, if this guy can do it, so can I. Because this is the last person you would, at least at a glance, if you're just looking at the physical being and the avatar, right, that he's possessing, like this is the last person I would expect to start weeping, talking about his child, talking about his wife and the connection that they had. And for me, that really redefined what it meant to be able to share. And the lesson that I took back is as leaders, we call them pillars inside of our community, these pillars who are supporting this divine structure and allowing people the opportunity to express themselves. We really have to go first. And so it's about sharing really candidly about what's current in our lives, whether that's the struggle with infidelity that I had with my wife, whether it's talking about rehab and my struggles with ketamine and my overdose. I share these things right away, and so do the other pillars. So by the time it gets to our first person that's coming in, whether it's their first time or their fourth or fifth time, they're not going to say everything's fine and talk about the weather, because now they're going to be the odd man out, right? They're going to come with some really beautiful, powerful, and vulnerable shares, and that just opens the door. Right, the minute the first person starts crying, the minute the first person is struggling with something and having a very real conversation, it's not what's up. Oh, the weather, it's really nice out. Like we're getting into it straight away, and that just sets such a beautiful tone for this authentic and very genuine release of what they're currently carrying. And it's their opportunity to leave it at the door, or share it with a bunch of people who can receive it and carry that with them, so they know they're not alone.
Yes. Those vulnerable shares and the tears, and sharing those those hiccups we've had in life, right? Up front, the things that make us feel the most vulnerable really, I agree, bring out that comfort in others to share the same. Because I think often, no matter where people are in life, when they get when they run into trouble again, or they get a new mental health diagnosis, or they get a physical diagnosis, or they run into trouble with the law, they immediately feel they're the only one. And through our shares, it's very easy for them to realize, like, oh my gosh, no, it's okay. Everyone has been through something. And the older you get, the more everybody's been through some serious shit.
Yeah.
And to share that is so powerful. And I'm curious, what does it mean to you to be a man?
Wow. Good question. I think very multifaceted, right? I think at times it is showing strength and being able to carry things, right? So it's not that there's not a time and a place to be vulnerable and share, and yet sometimes as a man you do have to walk through things. And I think in the divine masculine there's this gift that's given to us that oftentimes acts as a curse, right? We can compartmentalize and put things on the side and continue to go to war spiritually, mentally, physically, whatever it is, and grind and hustle and do all the things that we need to do, whether you're a breadwinner or whether you're trying to just figure out what you want to do in life. There's this perseverance and fortitude that men are able to tap into, or the masculine is able to tap into. And at the same time, to be able to have a reprieve from that and to let those bags down, let those things that weigh us down go. And the only way to let them go is to express them, to talk about them, whether that's through journaling or a ceremony of some type, whether that's with psychedelics or not. To have a circle where you can talk about it comfortably and confidently. And as you do those things and you start to let them go, you're not carrying them with you anymore. And it makes you more present every single day. And so now when my kids come up and they want to talk to me about something and I'm busy doing something, instead of blowing up and saying, I'm trying to do work, I'm trying to do this, right? I could be present in the moment that's at hand. And I think that's a really key piece of just being a good human, right? Is understanding the balance of the masculine and the feminine, understanding what it means to be present as a man. And again, it's, a big part of that for me is having a really strong foundation, feeling like deeply rooted so I can weather whatever the storm is going on and not let the external chaos of those events impact my inner peace. And if I can bring a sense of calm to the chaos, everyone around me is going to start to reflect that more and more. And as we sit inside of that deeply rooted foundation of the masculine, it's showing that strength by being quick to apologize, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
also being silly and getting into your inner child and connecting with that side and being curious and having fun and bringing joy and play and all those beautiful things. It's living in those worlds respectively at any given time, and making sure that the people around you feel safe and secured and held in that masculine energy, because that creates a beautiful space for the feminine, right? And when the feminine feels safe, the expression that's received is so amazing, right? Because now you get to tap into those emotions. You get to understand the value of listening, right? Which is such a divinely feminine gift, to the ability to listen, right? As men, it's like, what's the problem? Yeah, I got you. Let's just do this, right? And yet,
Let me
so
fix it.
much, yeah, let me fix it, right? And when we go to fix those things, it's normally because there's been some discomfort that arises in us. And so our first, answer is, I'm going to go and fix that thing. But that's where you get to the divine masculine has to be able to tap into the feminine sides of them and listen and receive in such a way that any expression that comes is welcome. It doesn't matter if it's anger or sadness and tears and grief and joy and exuberance, whatever that expression is that's coming, that's being shared, whether it's from the masculine or the feminine, whether that's means a man or a woman to you, it's really irrelevant. It's just being able to receive that expression through a safe container that you've expressed, because you're not going to blow up. You're not going to have this moment where, and this is coming from someone who, I'm really good at fixing holes in walls because I punched a lot of them, right? And it's I'm happy to say that it's been about 8 years since I've gotten to that space of being able to put an elbow through a wall or punch my way through something. And yet that came from the work of looking at the things that triggered me, the things that would set me off, and realizing that it wasn't what my wife just said or friend just said, or any of these people that we have in our lives, these various partnerships. The work had to start with me. The work had to start with, like, if I want safety myself, I have to create safety for others. And I think that is a beautiful gift that the divine masculine gets to share with everybody when they're fully embodied, is you are safe here because I'm not going to fly off the handle.
Mm. Yeah, it reminds me of, over the last year and a half of my life, I've had two different partners who held a really safe space for me, and to be for the first time in my life in that space where a partner went, Every expression that you have is okay." Like, I don't think he ever called me a little crazy, but he was like, your emotions are really exaggerated right now, and that's okay. And I see you and I witness you, and just like, get it out. And I was like, "What do you mean it's okay? It's never been okay. What do you mean that me like being super anxious about and confessing this to you is okay?" And he's like, "It's okay. It's beautiful. And we can talk about how this can be a different way, but like, get out what you got to say." And I'm like, "I uh, don't know what to do with this." And then to continue to be held by that, was so incredibly healing for my femininity. So I really honor that what you touch on is a lot of, it takes that knowing of thyself and working on thyself to be in control of our emotions instead of letting our emotions control us. That when you know your triggers, you can take a deep breath, you can re-regulate your nervous system, you can be in control so that you can respond kindly to your kids, so that you can respond lovingly to your wife, so that those responses are just so different. And what I love about you is you've been with your wife for like ever in my comparison to my world.
Yeah.
How long have you guys been
14 years of
together?
marriage, 17 years together. That's it can feel like no time and forever at the same time. It's really beautiful.
Yeah. And so you guys got to start really your healing journeys together. When did that start for you? Like your deep reflections and transformations?
Um, wow. So when I met my wife Shirley, who I probably will only say that name once because I call her my little pixie. Um, but I met her back in 2005. We started dating in 2006, and look, we were kids. You know, I was shoot 17 years ago. I was 28 years old, and she was, I think she had just turned 22 when we started dating. So
Mm,
very early on for the both of us to go through, and we didn't know who really, as most 20 somethings don't really know who they are, right? You're still trying to
yeah.
figure it out, and that's not a slide to anybody in their 20s. You feel like you know who you are, great, you're way ahead of the game than I was. I was still figuring out what my traumas were from my parents and who I wanted to be and what that looked like. And it was really a big shift that started to happen. Is we had this immense love, we had so much, we've never been, I'll rephrase it and say it this way, it's probably better. We've been the type of couple that when we go out somewhere, people will ask us, "Oh my God, how long have you guys been dating? You're so in love. It's so cute. Like, has it been like a year or whatever?" And we're like, "No, it's been 11 years," right? And we're still engaged in that playful banter and, those passionate kisses and just joy and laughter and all those things. So we had a lot of the recipes for a great relationship. What we didn't have was the emotional awareness of what we needed ourselves to get that. And so I think that as I started looking at when the journey really started to do some of the deep healing work, I would say it happened probably, in 2018, I went to Jerusalem and I went to the West Wall and I had a deeply spiritual awakening, so to speak, of like, oh, there's some things that need to change. And, I had no idea what that meant, but I suddenly had this awareness of, oh God, like I actually don't know what I'm doing. Like I thought I had this world wrapped up, I got a great job and I'm making seven figures and I'm loving life. And yet there were parts of me that were deeply unhappy. And as I started to join the Fit for Service community, I would have all these people come up to me and say, "Wow, like I would love to have your relationship with somebody, and you guys are so in love, and there's so many amazing things." And they were giving me all these compliments, but they felt very much out of alignment with what was happening because I was being unfaithful. I wasn't stepping into owning my side of the mess, right? And a lot of it was because I was looking for love, constantly looking for love. And for me, it showed up through self awareness, right? Through self love. And my validation, early on in our relationship came through that physical act of connecting with somebody intimately. And that was like, you're a good boy, you're worthy. There it is, right? And it was something that was obviously it explains the behavior, but doesn't excuse what I was doing because I was not living in my authentic truth. I was not living from a place of feeling those compliments and really embodying them. And so by 2020, I got to a spot where I went in and had a real deep conversation with my wife. And I told her about the infidelity. I told her about the things that were going sideways. And as we started to step through those things, it was obviously she was deeply, deeply hurt, right? There was a lot of things that arose from that conversation and me telling her about the infidelity that caused her to go sideways. I mean, she left me. She went to go visit her friend in Las Vegas, and just she wanted to get the hell away from me because obviously that was a really big and shocking thing to hear about. And and the reason for that wasn't to offload or, get rid of this guilt or whatever. It was to live in a full and complete embodiment as a man of living my truth. And so really, I would say it started, that was December 6th, 2020, that we stepped into that. And I was very fortunate that the universe had orchestrated for the both of us a ayahuasca ceremony in Costa Rica. And we got to really sit with that medicine and listen to the teachings that it gave us and what it provided for, the two of us to really step into a deeper form of healing, right? Healing ourselves, allowing us to speak our individual truths. And there was a lot of things shared. It was a really rough and difficult road for about 2.5 years to the point where, we were talking about, are we going to be able to make it through this? Right? What do you want out of it? What do I want out of it? And I think anytime you really look at those hard truths, it forces you to step into a place where you're looking at not just yourself, but what can you take on together? And you have to make a decision. Are we going to do this together, or do we need to heal separately? And to the point where in 2022, our anniversary is on May 15th. And we sat at this hotel room to celebrate our anniversary. And we literally mapped out what it would be like to separate and get a divorce. To who would take the kids, where would she live, where would I live, how would we alternate? And, as we talked that out painstakingly, every detail we could possibly imagine for about 6 hours, at the end of it, we both decided well, I don't want to do this alone. And she said, well, I don't want to do this alone either. And then, for her part, she had a choice. Do I want to step in and do this work with this man? And the answer was yes. And, I think conversely, it was the same thing for me. And my comment to her was, look, we've both done so much work that, if you decide to let me go, because I really wanted to stay, but I understood her hurt as well. I understood her expression of the breach of trust and all the things that had come through, that we got to a spot where it was I think my comment was, if you let me go, you're going to find someone amazing and I'm going to find someone amazing, right? Because we're becoming these amazing people. We're attracting this and we're doing all this work, but somebody else is going to get your reward. You've stuck with me through all the good and the bad and all this other stuff. And I'm finally the man that you deserve. And, and conversely, right, you're becoming the woman that I deserve, because we were kids when we met, right? I can't emphasize that enough. And yet it was why would I give that to somebody else, right? If there's still love there, can we work through this? Can we be honest with each other to a spot where we say, yeah, we can overcome anything? And that was a huge piece of it. And man, that was such a powerful moment and a defining moment inside of our relationship that really allowed her to say, okay, I might have these feelings and they might pop up still. And yet I know the man that you are now and the man that you are looking to become. And I trust in that. And I trust in my discernment of when you're telling me the truth or not. I'm trusting myself that I can trust you and that you're trustworthy, right? That you're not going to do those things. And so as we walked through that very, very dark space, the most beautiful thing illuminated, which was this massive amount of love and desire that we had for each other to really have the best possible life. And we just decided that it was with each other. And so, that moment was a turning point. We stepped into a MDMA ceremony later that night and able to carry the conversation together further and from a very open-hearted space, obviously, and receive things. And, I learned that, she had heard some things that she was hiding as well. And we got to step into those things from a space of we didn't do this to each other. We did this for each other. And it asserted her independence and her ability to step into motherhood and to speak her truth in her voice. And I think that as we look back at those things, and it's a beautiful lesson for everyone, is that there are times where you go through some darkness and you think, man, this is so rough. And yet there's so much beauty that comes out of that darkness. And there's so much beauty that people can enter into and say, wow, this is a defining moment for our relationship. And now that we've made this decision to do it together, let's do it with every bit of love and, mental clarity and fortitude that we have to create an amazing life.
Mm. Yeah, it kind of relates back to that being seen, as we talked about earlier. So to really see someone, to see your partner in their fuck ups, to
Mm.
see their partner in their most authentic truth, and to say, that hurts, and I'm going to choose to love you anyways. And I think that level of validation for your authenticity and that level of commitment, you're absolutely, you are the embodiment of what exponential love can be grown from that, from the darkness to the light, how bright it can really get after that when you recommit.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think so much of it as well, or what I believe is that when she was telling me about, her infidelity, it was, do you forgive me? And my answer was, there's nothing to forgive. Like, I accept you in all of your darkness and all of your
Mm.
light because it's a part of you. And so for me, um, I didn't need to give her an apology or give her not an apology, but I needed to give her, of course, forgiveness. I needed to just say all parts of you are welcome, and it's very similar to what we talked about in the Divine Masculine. It's embodying that I don't need to be perfect, right? Because I realized through therapy and psychedelic journeys that I had this need to like be the hero and fix every situation, and I don't worry, to the rescue, right? Here comes Superman wearing his cape, and I've got it, I'll fix it. Some things don't need to be fixed. They need to be, seen, felt, and expressed and really deeply learned from. And it's those painful moments in our lives that really, allow us to shape who we're going to become. And they're oftentimes the best teachers. They're hard to go through, but they are the best teachers for who we are truly going to be and who we truly are. Because, my thing is I'm not becoming a new person. I'm becoming the person I was always meant to be, right? I'm not trying to do something new. I'm trying to pull away all those traumas and those stories and negative things and, pull them to the side and say, this is the real me without all of those things. And I think that's a beautiful part of living a very felt expression of who we are. It's not this new thing to become. It's this thing to remember that we already are.
And you touched on something that I also think is super important in terms of relationships, which is that radical acceptance of each other. And in picking a partner where you have that soul resonance, where it's like, you are my person, and you may have some things that I don't agree with, or that I wouldn't necessarily choose if I was making my perfect list. However, you are that person, and I just accept it. And that's okay. I think we get so wrapped up in making these lists of the perfect ideal person and getting so detailed about it. And, people like Dispenza will have you really hone in on every single detail and attach the high frequency emotion to the meditation, and trust that, that's the person you're going to pull into your peripheral. And like, yes, very well, that could be the case. But also, there's that soul resonance that really lets
Mhm.
you know, I think, when you are with your partner, and to accept those, all of those aspects of them, all of their fuck ups, and to do it with love is just an incredible way to show up in your relationship.
Yeah, no, that's a really salient point. We were we were talking about some of that in the men's retreat because there's a few men who are single in that retreat and talking about their partners and what they're calling in. And I think there's some beauty to knowing what that looks like in some ways. But I think more importantly, again, in my opinion, is what is it that you don't want, right? What are some of the things that are immediate red flags that are probably better described as what are your energetic boundaries? What are the
Mm.
things that you are not going to be able to accept, right? So is it somebody that's super angry and yelling at you and can't respect the boundary of when you say, hey, I need time before we engage back in this conversation, but they need to talk about it right now, right? If that's you, like, set that boundary, know what that looks like. And when we know our energetic boundaries, it also gives us beautiful room for the universe to co-create and present a perfect partner for you. That's all the things that you never knew you wanted, right? It's this surprise that we get where we go, wow, like I never would have guessed. I never would have picked this person as my partner or some of these qualities as my partner, but holy cow, like this is it, man. This is a righteous partnership, and I'm learning so much and growing so much, and I'm being challenged to do the things that I know are going to, create this massive amount of growth and this big opportunity for me because I think a good representation of the divine feminine is somebody that challenges you in ways, right? They are somebody that prepare you for the world outside. And, that sometimes that comes with some, little fun, within the boundaries of expression of some jabs of like, that's important to you, really? And blah, blah, blah. Like, well, shit, is it? Like, if you're telling me this and I love you, like, maybe I need to reevaluate that thing, right? and that's such a great opportunity for growth there. And look, it's we're all perfect exactly as we are, and yet we're always pursuing this growth opportunity to do something that's really powerful and profound for ourselves and the people around us.
And so hearing you say you guys made this recommitment in 2022, I'm going to segue a little bit in that I know your channeling abilities sort of came on around that same time frame, that wasn't like a gift you had your whole life, but it kind of had a rapid onset. So talk to me a bit about how that happened and where did that fit into your self-growth journey?
Sure. So that came online. That was December 10th at 8:24 p.m. and I'll never forget that day. But my wife and I, again, we're still unpacking a lot of the things about being together and what it looked like to be in a relationship together. Part of that meant, does it make sense for us to open up our relationship, right, to other people? And really, that came about as a part of this journey of healing. And it was really more centered around my wife, right? Because we met so early and she had some, sexual trauma when she was growing up from her, stepfather, and energetically her boundaries around, physical intimacy were crossed at a very young age. And so what does that look like to be held and seen by other men in a very healthy way? And so she had gone to Mexico with one of her girlfriends, and that was on the table as a part of expression. And when it happened, it was a challenging time at the moment because I actually felt it happening, which, as crazy as that sounds, like I knew that she was being physically intimate with somebody, and we had set this parameter that she was going to tell me, yes, it's going to happen, and she was going to text me afterwards, yes, I'm safe and everything's fine. And so we connected that day, and really through miscommunication, she thought like, oh yeah, I've got an opportunity, and yes, and yet it didn't meet what I had in mind, and that I didn't communicate very clearly, and I know now why it couldn't happen any other way, but that she had some intimacy with her friend and this other gentleman. And so on one side, I had a very sticky emotion of feeling like betrayed in some way and that I was being crossed. And yet I also felt the safety and the joy and the love and the connection to her, sister in this, just like there's a brotherhood, there's a sisterhood, and the safety and all the things that came with it, and the joy of the experience. And then conversely, there's my feeling like I got punched in the stomach. And I was like, oh, and I sent this text and I said, this is what I'm feeling. I don't know if I'm right, but it feels like this is happening. And she sent me a text about 45 minutes later. She was like, yeah, why? What's wrong? What's going on? And I was broken open by it. Like I was just raw. And it felt sort of like my, if I had to give like a metaphor for it, it was like I had my heart and it crystallized in my hand, and then it just instantly shattered into sand. And I couldn't hold my heart. So it didn't matter who reached out to me. And a lot of my friends were reaching out. Hey, just, felt called to reach out to you. What's going on? And it was the first time that every time somebody asked me and I felt safe, I would say, this is the feeling. This is what's going on. And I was communicating not the truth, but my truth. I feel this way. And I don't know that I've ever expressed myself, or at least my feelings, so openly and so honestly, that I got to that space and I was like, wow, like again, broken open, and there's this quote, right? The heart cracked open can contain the whole universe. It felt like I was carrying the whole universe, emotionally speaking, like I was going through so much. And when she got home on a Friday. We talked a little bit about it for about 2 hours after the kids went to bed. I still didn't feel complete the next day. Saturday night, we continued to speak at it. I'd done a little bit of ketamine, and I just kept hearing this like voice saying, like, keep going, keep sharing. She's like, do you feel good? Do you feel complete? And I was like, I also, this is up here, and this is another part of the feeling. And I just nonstop until where I finally felt like this massive release. And I remember laying my head down on the couch, and this is probably about an hour and a half after we had our ketamine ceremony. And all of a sudden I felt the pop of the top of my head. It felt like it popped off. It's sort of like what I would imagine a champagne bottle would feel like when you shake it up and you like go boom. And then all this stuff started coming out. This bullying that I went through in high school, sexual trauma from a neighbor, and a bunch of things that I have no recollection, but I was watching myself in those moments, unattached to the feelings, but still aware of like the pain and the I don't understand what's going on, and the being scared about the bullying and some of the things that, some of the violent acts. And I was like, watched all this, and it was like, wow, it was like, it felt like a Bufo-esque release. Like I was just like emptied in the most beautiful way. And as I emptied, like at the last of everything came out, I heard these voices. And at the time, that's really how they presented themselves. And they said, hey, we're so happy. Like, we've been waiting for this day. We're your guides. We're here to help you through life, and blah, blah, just all these really benevolent things. And, I said, well, what does this mean? They're like, well, you're going to be able to start channeling, and you've had this intuition, and this is how you're going to experience it. And I guess, I don't know, because my wife didn't take a picture or anything, but I guess I had this smile on my face. And she said, okay, she goes, where are you? I know you're not sleeping. Like, what's happening in your head right now? And I immediately thought, oh shit, like, I'm going to tell my wife that that I'm hearing these voices. And like, oh, she's going to think I'm crazy. I'm like, I just say nothing or whatever. And they were like, no, like you got access to this place by living in your truth and really expressing it. You have to tell her. And so I said, well, I described the sensation of the head, and that these voices are coming in and they're telling me that, they're my guides. And she didn't say it, but she thought it, and I heard it. I heard her thoughts go, oh my God, my husband's lost it. And I answered out loud. I said, I know you think I've lost it. I know you're worried about me, but it feels very safe. It feels very full of love and connection. And I have this deep trusting in the experience and what I'm hearing. And then the next thought in her head was, I don't think I said that out loud. And so I said, you didn't say that out loud. We are communicating telepathically. Like, I'm hearing your thoughts. And for the next 2 hours, we started to, what does this, she would think, what does this mean for the kids? And I would tell her, what does this mean for us? And I would tell her, oh my God, this, to the point where Barrett, it would be like, she would like, if this is real, grab my foot. And I would like grab her foot and start massaging it. If this is real, hand me that water over there. And I'd reach up and, hand her the water. And she was like, oh my God, this is crazy. And, it was really in that moment that they finally kind of, let go of that part of the connection so she could have some privacy. Right. And, she goes, well, why did that happen? And the way that they explained it was, look, number one, you needed to live in your truth and your authentic self to present this. And number two, by letting her have this experience, that you do have this telepathy, and that we all have access to this, and you're experiencing it right now, we have to shatter her limiting beliefs. And so you went up like 5 cosmic ceilings. We had to break a few so she wouldn't think you were crazy, and she wouldn't think that you're, losing your mind, so to speak. And that's really how the gift came online. And, since then it's, hey, talk to this person and reach out and offer a session here. And it's just been something that's been slowly, developing, through time. And it's come with great insight, and it's been beautiful. And it's also like, sometimes it feels like I'm riding a bike and really easy. And other times it feels like I'm, flying in a spaceship, and I'm not sure what exactly this button does and what that button does. And yet I'm figuring it out.
Mm. Well, you are incredible at it. I've had a couple sessions with you and have just been wildly impressed at your ability to tap in to say exactly what I need to hear. I'm still always referencing back to things that you've said that I even find when I would be in a session with you and I would be listening to you, I almost get this weird sort of tunneling with you where it's like almost like my higher consciousness is communicating directly through you. And as I watch you communicate it, I'm like hypnotized and mesmerized in that I am talking to myself is how some of your messages have come across for me that are just awesome. Like
Yeah,
I
thank you, thank you. Yeah, that's definitely a part of the gift. Is really it's a lot of the things that I say as you experience are things that people already know or have experienced, and it's the validation seems to become like, okay, well, if he's saying this, then there's something to it. There's something that I should be listening to here. And so when I tap in with somebody, it's really, my guides and your guides, your higher self, they all kind of come together, and it's almost like this choir is like saying the same thing simultaneously. And I could tell it's different voices, but it's very, beautiful and succinct and to the point. And sometimes I say things and I have no idea what they mean. And I sit in front of someone, they're like, "Oh my God, that's crazy. So and so this just happened," or "I can't believe you mentioned an egg. Like we had a crazy experience." I'm like, "Okay, good. I almost didn't say it because I wasn't sure what that meant, but I'm glad it means something to you."
yeah, to be so tapped in. That's something I'm working towards as well, which probably is a similar path of tapping into your truth, living your truth at all times, and allowing for that resistance to fade away and stilling of the mind. Um, and so I'm curious. Something else I know about you is right before you facilitated ketamine for myself and you and Shirley and Alex Ruiz. Um, you actually had a ketamine overdose, like
Yes.
a week or two before we sat with you. And at the time, you were like, "Oh yeah, I was just I accidentally doubled up." Um, but talk to me about that because that's something that's really not being talked about with ketamine, and it's a medicine that I find incredibly powerful for connecting us to our higher consciousness, and something I'm starting to work with my clients on. And Alex is a big fan as well. And
Yeah,
um, how did that how did that happen?
sure. Well, ketamine is a great helper in a lot of things. It's a body disassociative for those who are listening who are unaware, and it really sort of just removes your body and allows your mind and your spirit to kind of go places that can allow for some beautiful insights. And I'd been using it probably since about 2021. And it started off as like, once a month I would use it. And then I was having these great journeys. And, I have this more monster that lives inside of me. That's like, well, if one's good, two is better. And let's see how far we can go. And I continued to go down that path. And so with the ketamine, as beautiful as the insights were, I got to this space where it was really starting to use me a little bit more than I was using it. And it can be addictive, not physically, according to the research, but I think certainly the place that you go to can be addictive, right? Wanting to go there, wanting to continue to expand and get these insights and get this information. And one of the things about like meditation and such is that, part of it is like getting the body out of the way, right? Well, ketamine makes you feel like a Buddhist monk 20 years in a cave. You're like, boom, tapped in, right? You inhale it a few, pumps of it, or if you're doing the powdered form, and you just go to this place, and it's like, what body? I am consciousness. I am going to these beautiful places. And so part of that story that I feel compelled to share is that got to the spot where I was doing it pretty much every day, right? And
Mm.
there was a lot of beauty to it. And the danger of it is unlike alcohol, where you have, you can have these hangovers, or even psilocybin or LSD or whatever you're working with. You get to the spot where you just feel exhausted, and so it's like, okay, I need some space from that. My experience with ketamine is like, this is wonderful. I don't have hangovers. I don't have anything. I feel amazing. And oh my God, like what? I'll just keep going further. And so through the beautiful experiences that I had, I eventually got to a space where I started working with intermuscular ketamine. So it's you draw it out with like a needle, and you could put it in your arm, your leg, and normally you would do anywhere from, if you go to a clinic, they're going to do like anywhere from 10 IUs to maybe a full CC. And I was doing about 3/4 of a CC of 1 cc or one full one, and I got very comfortable with doing it. I'm on human growth hormone, so I'm used to injecting myself. I do TRT. And so the needles wasn't a big obstacle for me. And I started leading people through these amazing journeys. And everyone said same version of the same thing. Wow, this is so amazing. It's so beautiful. Oh my God, there's these great experiences. And so on the night of April 3rd, my wife and I decided that we were going to do a journey together. Her sister was living with us at the time and had just gotten home. And she said, I'm going to go in the back house. We had this little casita. And she went to the back house and she said, I'll be right back. And something in me was just like, all right, I'm doing one. And I did the first one. I loaded up another one and I was like, well, again, that more monster, right? Well, if one's good, two is better. And so boom, I did the second one. And as I got about halfway in, I heard the guides go, this is not a good idea. And I was like, you guys don't know what you're talking about, right? Like, I'm good. I'm a traveler. I love being out there in the cosmos. And that's always been it. Like if someone's going to take, 3.5 gram mushroom trip, I want to do 4 or 5 or 6 or 7. And, I
Something you and I
just,
have in common.
yeah, we've talked about that for sure.
Mm.
And, I stepped into that space and I was like, all right, I'm on this journey. And I remember the last thing I remember in this world here was my wife coming in and looking at me strangely going, did you just give yourself a shot? And she didn't know that I had done two. And I said, yeah. And I slowly started like falling down onto the couch because I was sitting on the couch. And the next thing was my experience. I all of a sudden found myself in this all white, windowless room, cornerless room. I could hear the hum of, if you've ever been in a room full of servers, there was this like buzz, like this boo. And I remember looking around and going to different spots in the room and feeling like, oh my God, I'm pure consciousness. I am the light. And so I had that realization. And then as I continued to explore this room of nothingness, the next thing I thought was, where am I? And I heard God's voice. And the voice said, are you ready to come be a part of me again? And I was like, whoa, that sounds a lot like dying. Like that sounds a lot like leaving this plane of existence entirely. And I said, no, I'm just exploring. This is what I do. And the voice said, well, then you need to breathe. And as I heard the voice say breathe, I also heard my wife's voice at the exact same time saying breathe. And I was like, well, okay. And so I can breathe anytime I want. And then it said breathe again. So God's voice, my wife's voice. And then I heard my body, not connected to it at all, but this very labored breath of like, like trying to like gasp for air. And as soon as I got some air, again, not feeling it or connected to the body, it was like, okay, then, you don't need to be here anymore. And I was like pushed out of this room, sort of. There wasn't any physical kind of push, but I left to this other plane of consciousness. And I found myself in the middle of, it was like what I would imagine being in the middle of space. And I was looking at all these stars. And as I started to look at one, I was like, how on your phone you can like zoom in and out? I was able to like zoom in and I would see all this life on different planets. And I was like, yes, like this is where hell yeah, I would try to go here for sure. And I would zoom in all these different planets and I was like really enjoying it. And it felt like I would spend 5-10 minutes on one spot and then move to the next, but also felt like it was happening in an instant. And then I remember hearing my kids' voices, and they were older, and they said, "Dad, you're not supposed to be here. You've got to come back." And I was like, again, I was so euphoric. It was so beautiful that I was like, "I'm fine, guys. This is what I do. Like, I'm good." And then my wife, and then all of my friends, and like countless people that throughout my past and people that I didn't recognize, but I obviously knew. I don't know if they're a future state of this life or what the explanation was, but I just started to hear some version of the same thing was, don't do this. You can't be here. You need to come back. Please don't leave. It was all some version of that. And so eventually I was like, okay, like everybody's so concerned. And I started to come back. And as I was coming back, I'd also done a little bit of cannabis, and the spirit of cannabis presented herself. And it was this very loving big sister energy. Like, I don't have a big sister, but I would imagine that's what it would be like. It was just this like very sweet, straightforward, I care about you, but you're fucking up. Like, you're being dumb here. And it said, in a minute, you're going to see your wife and you're going to want to apologize. And she's done with apologies. She's done with talk. Like, the time for words is over. Like, you need to like embody like this divine masculine foundation. You need to be a man of action, and you're not doing that right now. And I took it in, but I was very confused because my experience, again, straight bliss. And as I came to, I opened my eyes and I saw my wife, and she had 911 on the phone, but not dialed. And she was looking at me and she said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm fine. Why?" And she said, "Good, because I'm going to fucking kill you." Like, do you have any idea what's happened? You were not breathing. You were turning blue. You were spitting up. You started having convulsions. Like, what the F is your problem? And I was like, "Baby, I'm sorry." And I went to hug her. She's like, "Don't touch me." And immediately I got the sign like, no, like, you need to cry about this. You need to this is trauma. Like, I've just put you through the worst thing. It's watching you watch your partner die. And, she was fighting me a little bit. Eventually I got her into my arms and she just started sobbing. And it was in that moment that I realized, like, oh my God, like what in the hell is happening to me? Like, what am I doing? Like, I'm not setting any boundaries. This is no longer a ceremony. This is me chasing something. This is not me trying to discover something. This is not me trying to get the answers. This is me in search of something that's not the present time and not the present reality. And even after that moment, it still took me another 2 weeks to realize that I had a problem. I had a mental health crisis, and I was using this as escapism, right? And I was using this as a way to get out. And it took me 2 weeks to realize that, because I did another journey, this time not intermuscular, but I did another journey where I had the spray, and I also did some cannabis, and I sat upright for this entire like meditation that just came on me. And I saw every single time that I had said that the men in my family don't live much, past their mid 40s, because my mom lost her dad and he was in his 40s. My dad's dad died when he was in his, I believe, late 50s, early 60s. And I realized the power of like the spoken word and casting spells, and that I had said this time and time again from the time I was about 16, 17 until I was, probably early 40s before I stopped saying that. And I realized here I am 4 days after my 45th birthday, and I've manifested my own death. And, through that realization came the fact that I said, okay, I need help. I need to, speak with someone about this and take this stuff away from me, go hide it, throw it away, do whatever you need to do. Just like, I can't be a part of this. And in talking with my therapist that I've been working with for years, told her I want to go to rehab. I want to go to a space where I can just focus on me. I can't be a dad right now. I can't be a partner. I can't be a co-founder. I can't be leading retreats. I just need to. I need to focus on me. I need to get better. And at the time, I was really deep into that side of the addiction, and I didn't have the clarity as to whether it was a mental health crisis or if it was an addiction or both. But I was able to check myself into rehab. I spent 2 weeks there, and told them, look, if you need me here for 2 more weeks, I want to be reevaluated. And I also don't want to to sit and miss any more time with my kids. And so I'm going to do everything that I can to arrive and be a part of every discussion, be a part of group counseling, be a part of the individual sessions. And, it was a lot of work. It was, 3 group meetings a day. It was, 3 individual sessions a week. It was time away from my kids, which was probably the hardest part of not being able to see them and connect with them, except for on a video chat here and there. And it also ended up being the best thing for me, because through that space, I realized that I had anxiety, that I'd worn the mask so well that I had myself convinced that I didn't have anxiety. I had PTSD from sexual abuse as a kid, and being robbed at gunpoint, and during a home invasion robbery, and things that I had really just compartmentalized. Right? I think we talked about, like, put that thing in a bag, but because I didn't let it out, all of a sudden it came back in all these other ways, and I wasn't facing them. I wasn't dealing with them and looking at them. And it was through that time of really just journaling every day, 2 and 3 times a day, sitting in meditation, doing yoga, doing all the things that had really helped me out the last 4 years that I'd stopped doing the last 6, 7 months because the escapism was there. It was, well, I don't even have to do that. I could just go to this place right away. Boom, I'm there. 15 minutes and you're in it, man. Like I'm whisked away, and this world doesn't exist, so those problems don't exist. And yet you always come back to reality, right? You always come back to being here. And as I sat with that decision of going into rehab, I realized that, like, I made the best possible choice, because a part of me on that very last ceremony was like, oh, I missed my opportunity to die. Like I should have died. My wife would have had, all this money from my insurance policy, and I would have been, safe, and my kids would have been taken care of. And it was the first time in my life I really faced this suicidal ideation that I should have died. And that was the thing that really scared me into rehab and going back into the work. And it's also when I made the decision to be sober for a year, and to not engage in ketamine anymore. I don't know that I'll ever sit with it. But also, some of my favorite things. I love psilocybin, right? I'm not engaging with that. I love ayahuasca, but I'm not engaging with that right now. I really needed to unpack all the beautiful experiences that I had, all these amazing ceremonies, and give absolute time and attention to what I had curated through those experiences, and what it meant to me to live in the embodiment of being a man that is grounded in this reality, with these beautiful experiences and this beautiful insight and this beautiful gift. As amazing as it all is, it means very little if you can't anchor points of that down for other people. And that starts with yourself.
I appreciate you sharing so openly and vulnerably. I think I met you just shortly after that happened, and have gotten to witness your journey with that since, and so much of what you describe resonates with me as well. I also am chasing always those bigger and bigger experiences, and have battled deep depression since then, and suicidal ideation since then, and got to talk with you also about, what was it that makes you want to stay. And so I'm curious, what did you discover that makes you really want to stay?
Yeah. Wow. At first, I think I unfairly, said, well, I'll do this and I'll get help for my wife, right? And that was a lot to put on her, right? And she was like, don't do it for me. Like, if you don't want to be here, if you're not in this, like I don't want you to go, but like, that's not fair. And yet I needed to have some reason to step into rehab. And so I was like, if I can't do it for my wife and I can't do it for my kids, I need to go back to doing this for myself. And it took me back to a Temescal ceremony that I had in 2019, where I sat down, and Temescal is a sweat lodge, and you're in there for like an hour and a half. And each time you're in there, there's 4 different ceremonies inside of it, 4 different stages, if you will. And it just gets hotter and hotter in this room. And to the point where you're just like, why am I in here? What the hell is happening? And I remember sitting down in the last stage. It was in Tulum, Mexico. And the last one, they bring in the more of the grandmother stones, and they do this Icaros where they say they're going to call in your ancestors. And I remember sitting in there, and it was getting hotter and hotter, and I just closed my eyes, and I was sitting, cross-legged, and I had my hands on my knees. And as I sat there, I felt this presence, and I kind of opened my eyes a little bit, and as clear as I'm seeing you, I saw my grandmother, my grandma Pat. And she just smiled at me, and she put her hand on my hand. And I remember feeling her hand touching me. And I'm in this visionary space. I'm not on any medicines. I'm just sitting with the heat and this intense sweat. And I immediately started crying because she had passed in 2012. And I was like, God, I miss you so much. She was like the matriarch of our family, and so many things kind of fell apart when she, first passed. And even at 90, she was so full of life, and cancer. She had 2-time cancer survivor, had kicked its butt, and the 3rd time was like, nah, I'm not doing this again. Like, wow. Change the taste of my wine, honey. Like, that's not a way to live, right? Like, that kind of energy and enthusiasm. And I said, I really I wish you could have met my kids. And she kind of smiled, this very grandmotherly smile, and looked at me and said, are you serious? Like, I've seen it all. And she showed like the very first time that my oldest son Hudson like held my finger when he was in the NICU, and when we brought him home, and his when he started crawling and his first step, and all these really beautiful moments. And it was like, wow, they're here watching, man, all the time. They have access to this plane, and I was like, wow, that's really beautiful. And I got out of that ceremony, and the Temescalero, through an interpreter, said, hey, and I'd said nothing about it, but the guy said, hey, he's saying that the ancestors are very strong with you, and that the next time you come, you should have a question for them because they love to help. And so I told my wife about it, who was with me, and she said, well, I want to talk to my granddad. Let's go do that. And so we went the following week, and I had this question that I wanted to ask in my head. And I got to that 4th stage, and they're calling in the ancestors. And I remember kind of like sitting up, and my hands on my knees again. And this time I felt 2 hands, and I opened my eyes, and I saw my grandma Pat and my grandma Betty. And I just started crying for my grandma Betty because it's like, I haven't thought about you as much. And, she had dementia, and I felt like I said goodbye a long time before, she transitioned physically from this world. And she was like, don't be silly. Like, I'm with you all the time, and I see this. And we had this beautiful conversation. And eventually they both said, well, we understand you have a question for us. And I said, yeah, tell me what the answer is. And they were like, no, you have to ask the question. And I was like, okay. And so I said, will I ever be worthy of self-love? And I was crying as I asked that question, but I realized that was my battle at the time, as I was battling self-love. And so they kind of looked at each other and then looked back at me and started laughing in a very grandmotherly way. It was like, you silly boy. And I was like, I don't get it. What's the answer? And they said, you can't be worthy of something you already are. And I said, okay, I don't really understand what you mean. Because I'm thick sometimes. And sitting with that, and they said, well, the rain doesn't ask when it falls from the heavens if it's worthy to be a part of the ocean. It just is a part of the ocean. And when it goes to a glacier and freezes and becomes a part of the iceberg and it's a solid again, doesn't ask if it's worthy to be a part of the glacier. It simply is. And when it evaporates and goes back into the heavens, it doesn't ask if it's worthy to be up there in that state either. It just is. And so you're asking if you're worthy of something that you already are. You already are love. There is no question of worthiness. And so that was really humbling to hear, and it was a lot. And then what really like solidified it is they both grabbed my hands again. And for the first time, maybe in my life, or at least that I can remember, I felt this deep love for myself. It was as though I was feeling about myself the way they feel when they look at me. And I had this like deep sense of like, whew, and I was sobbing, crying. I mean, when the session ended, they took me out of there and poured ice water over me. And I was like, I was having a hard time breathing, but I was so alive and I was just feeling this love. And it only lasted for about 3 days until I realized, well, like, okay, this is the work, is getting back to that place of feeling it. And so, the answer to the question is I needed to connect back to myself. I needed to connect back to love. I need to connect back to this feeling like I had something important to do here and something important to bring to myself and thus the world through sharing that story. And as I connected more and more to that sense of purpose and that sense of being, it was living in this full expression of love. And for me, that looked like authentically facing all the things that I had ignored for so long and really just talking about it with everybody. And, that's one of the reasons I reached out and said, all right, I'm ready to talk about this because I feel like there's so much that people can learn from when it comes to those struggles, whether it's drugs and alcohol or medicine or whatever it is. If you're operating in those spaces and you don't have a sense of your own self-love and your own self-worth and the value that you bring to the world, then you might be doing those things and engaging in those practices haphazardly or as escapism. And I wanted to really fully be present for myself. And as soon as I got to that space of like being present for me, it was like present for my wife, present for my kids, for my mother, my father, my dad, my friend, like all these people in my life. And I realized that was part of my mission. That was part of my expression, is to be embodied in love and to be authentic and truthful in love. And the more I connected with that, the easier it felt to step away from the medicine and to really integrate that truth for myself and for those around me.
Mm. And so you've been medicine free now for how long?
So May 27th. So I think I'm going on 6 months here as we get to the end of this month.
How does it feel?
Feels really good. Feels really good. There's definitely points where I miss it. I don't miss so much the space, but we're community and tribal beings, so I miss being in that space with people. In these past men's retreats, I've been around the medicine, but not in the medicine. And so it's very much observing myself in this new context and guiding other people and holding on to this new way of being and operating. Because, like I said, there's still that voice sometimes that kicks in, like, how much are you going to do? Well, I would do this much. Right? Like, I would go ahead and do a little bit more there just because I like that space so much. And yet it's brought so many valuable and amazing lessons to the forefront of what it means to really be like present and just in the frequency of myself and in the moment, right? And so learning to be present and there and of service for not only myself but also other people. And I feel like I'm holding that space a lot better every single time. And it's pretty easy to stay off the medicines, although, like I said, I've missed it. It just feels different. So I'm adjusting to that new way of being, and it's been a lovely process, to be quite honest. Not without its
Yeah.
challenges here and there of like, but I want to play too, right? I feel like a parent, instead of a kid playing on the jungle gym, I'm like, okay, be careful over there, right? Like, go do those things, but have an awareness. And yet that's also the energy that I'm looking to bring is to create that very safe container so people can play and express themselves and have fun and have their moments in the sandbox. I've spent a lot of time playing there, gone through a lot of ceremonies, and now it's time for me to be the watcher and to help out in that way.
Mm. Yeah, I can only imagine how different that is and the ways that you must be, coping to do that. And I'm curious, what have been one or two of your biggest tools to help you sit in that grounded space to stay out of the medicine? What has really gotten you to drop within and to feel grounded in this reality in
Sure.
yourself? Yeah.
Wow. Well, I'll say that I met with a beautiful, I don't know any other word to call him than a wizard, but I sat with this guy named Peter Evans, who's in Santa Monica. And big shout out to him. I met with him 2 weeks out of rehab. And when I came out of rehab, I had two moments that were very similar. One of them, my wife had left to take the kids to school, and I saw the little like container for ketamine, and I was like, "Fuck it, I'm gonna go do it. I'm gonna do it right now. I don't care." And I went over to go do it, and I picked it up, and it was a perfume bottle, and I was like, "Damn it! Like it's here though. Like I'm gonna tear this house apart." And I literally like rummaged through the sock drawer and a bunch of places, and then all of a sudden, like I felt myself stop, and out loud, I said, "Are you really gonna do ketamine right now?" And I started cracking up. It was like the most preposterous thing I'd ever like said out loud. And I was like, no. And I went and I looked in the bathroom mirror and I was like, I don't want to have to look you in the eye. I don't want to have to look my wife, my kids, my parents. Like, no, like this is ridiculous. And a similar thing happened the day before I met with this guy. And I was like, as soon as I had the thought, I saw the same exact thing again because, sometimes guys are thick. We can't find anything in the house. Why would we be able to find that? And I was like, okay, and again, as soon as I picked it up, I was like, are you really going to do ketamine again? Again, laughter. And I had named this part of myself like the Moor monster, and I called him Braxton. And he's this, I see him as this kind of frat guy who like, you're going to drink 12 beers. I'm going to drink 13. Like he just wants more of everything. And I started having this conversation. I was like, you're not needed, man. You've helped me out a lot in life. And I know that this was coping mechanism and we're moving through this. So like with love, like, no. And I was driving to this appointment with this healer named Peter Evans, like I said, and I pulled up to his house, and he's this long-haired, kind of silver fox Australian guy, and his whole vibe, it seemed like he was floating. And he's like, "All right, mate, let's hop in the back here." And we hopped in the back of this casita, and he's like, "Why are you here?" And I said, I don't know. Mindy, my therapist, recommended me to come. I don't really even know what you do. And he's like, "Oh, great." He's like, "Tell me about your journey." And so told him about facilitating Bufo and the overdose and what I was looking for and all the plant ceremonies, like I was telling him anything new. He was like, yep, 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 all right. And he sat down and he basically put me through a ceremony, but there was nothing that he gave me. I took three breaths and he blasted me off. And it felt like Bufo type blast off. I mean, I was in this space of like, what is happening? Where am I? And I, at one point, had that thought, where am I? And I know I didn't say it out loud. He said, "You're you, mate. That's all you can be." And then I thought, where am I? Again, didn't say it. And he goes, "You're safe. You're held. You're in a great space. You're totally safe." And I said, "Okay." And then I looked at him and I said, "Who are you?" Because I was gone. And he goes, "I'm your friend, mate. Like I'm here to help you." And he sent me back off again, like into this space. And as I came to it over and over again, he kept saying, like, you don't need the medicine. Like you are the medicine. Like this place that you're trying to get to, you have access to it every day. And the medicine is a beautiful bridge. It shows you what's possible. And there's a lot of really good reason to do the medicines. And you've come far enough in your journey. Like you don't need the medicine until the medicine tells you it needs you. And as soon as he said those words, it was like I was like living it, because we talk about that in the psychedelic world. We talk about, yeah, you don't need the medicine, it shows you this, and yet to have the felt expression where, again, this was probably the most powerful psychedelic experience I've ever had on no medicine. I now had this gnosis. I had this like feeling and experience of it. And I was like, holy crap, I don't need any of this. I don't. And I remember getting in my car, and it took me like 20 minutes to like feel like I could drive. And I was driving back home, and I flipped on this podcast. I couldn't even tell you what it was, but the guy in the podcast said, sometimes when we're shrouded in darkness, we feel like we've been buried, but really you've been planted. And he said those words, And it was like the first time that I felt it. I logically knew I could get better. I logically knew that yoga and meditation and journaling and gratitude and prayer and all these things were going to get me. I knew that it could here, but I didn't feel it here. And
Mhm.
as I pulled my car in the garage, I walked out, and it was like the first time I felt the sun on my face in like months. And I just felt like I'd sprouted, this tendril had broken the ground and was receiving the sun. And I just had all this different energy and all this different experience of what I was going through. And for the first time again, I was like, you've been given a gift, man. Like you've been given time to like reset and recharge and change your perspective. And you're looking at it like you're going through something, but like you're experiencing something, like something really amazing is happening for you right now, not to you. And as I had that feeling like hit me, I just sat there in the sun and I cried, and I just felt like a different person, like the real me had finally come through. And I remember going in and hugging my little pixie, and she's like, wow, you feel amazing. And I was like, I'm back. And it was like the first time I felt like I was back, like I was saying all the right things, but I was finally feeling it. And so it's a long way to answer the question of like getting to that space, like of being here for me, doing it for me, and as a byproduct, making other people connected to me and that love and that experience, and staying sober and living in that embodiment. Like that became my new truth is I'm going to do this for me, and and only me. And I also know that this is going to help so many people who hear this story and who are going through the same challenges, because now that I'm able to talk about it, now that I've received so many of the lessons, now that I'm living in that embodiment of staying away from those things, it just feels different. It feels right, and it feels amazing. So yeah, that's how I'm able to get through it, is just some beautiful gifts from the universe that have given me that remembering that we're all searching for. Because I think it's, we had that perspective like, hey, I'm chasing something and I want to know this and I want to know that, but we're all searching for this remembering of who we are, and the beauty that we really have to give, and the light that we can shed on the world.
Mm. So well said. And I just am so grateful to you for wanting to share your journey and being willing to do so. It's something I think so many people can resonate with always the questions of when is enough medicine enough? And, as facilitators, we tend to do so much more medicine than everyone else. And when is enough enough? And when do we need to pull back? And what is it that we're really chasing? And I've certainly struggled with some similar things, as you and I have talked about previously as well. And so I love that remembering, and that remembering for self love. Everything boils back down to self love, and from there we can expand and we can serve and we can fulfill our purpose.
Mm.
And so I'm so grateful to you for sharing.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And so, for anyone who would like to work with you in channeling sessions or learn more about your men's retreats, what is the best way to get in touch with you, and how can my audience keep up with you?
Sure. I will send you my Instagram. That's pretty much what I have set up right now. I'm definitely calling in some people to help set up a website and go through some of those things that I know will come in the perfect allotted time. But I'm at Casa de Hager, so CasaDeHager, and reach out. Let me know where you found me, and send me a message, and I'm happy to jump on and share anything that I can at any time to help people through whatever it is they're going through, because there's so much for us to learn and step into. So as I get to sit with people, it's beautiful. The messages that are for them also inevitably end up being beautiful gifts for me as well.
Yes, yes, they are. I look forward to, probably would love to schedule another session with you soon as well. And I'll have your Instagram linked up in the show notes. And I'm just so incredibly grateful for this conversation today. Thank you so much, Chris.
Likewise. Thank you, Barrett. Appreciate you.